Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we owe a big thanks to Lit RPG Reads and of course the ever-inspiring Paul Bello.
That's right. We're diving into Bello's work again with his article, 5e DND Noble Background Ideas.
You know, I've always had a blast playing nobles in my tabletop RPG sessions.
Oh. What is it about that kind of character that appeals to you?
There's just something so fun about strutting into a dingy tavern, decked out in my finest imaginary silks, and demanding the royal treatment.
I can only imagine the looks on the other players' faces.
Oh, it's priceless. One time I played this ridiculously pompous noble who refused to be addressed by anything less than his full title, which, by the way, was about a paragraph long.
A paragraph long. Now that's commitment to a bit.
Oh, I fully committed. The best part was trying to haggle with a grumpy dwarf blacksmith over the price of a simple repair.
I bet that didn't go over well with the door.
Not at all. He just glared at me and grumbled something about entitled royals. My fellow adventurers nearly died laughing.
That's what makes for a memorable game night. But getting back to Bello's article, you mentioned it inspired you. What speaks to you about his take on noble backgrounds?
The thing is, it's easy to fall into the trap of playing nobles as one-dimensional stereotypes. But Bello pushes us beyond that.
He really does. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon master or just starting out, his ideas add a whole new level of depth.
Now, for those who might not be familiar with D&D, let's break down how these backgrounds work.
Sure. It's more than just a label. A background is really your character's backstory. It's about delving into their past, their motivations, their history, their relationships.
Precisely. And that's where Bello shines. He goes beyond cliches and offers some really unique concepts.
He sure does. He's not just ticking off boxes with the usual rich heir or spoiled princess tropes.
Instead, he gives us 20 fully fleshed out noble backgrounds, each with its own twist. And he encourages players to collaborate with their dungeon master, to customize these ideas even further.
Which is what makes tabletop RPGs so engaging. It becomes a truly collaborative storytelling experience.
Absolutely. So how about we dive into some of these background categories? What caught your eye?
Well, one that immediately grabbed my attention was the Displaced Noble. Think of it as a fish-out-of-water scenario, but with a noble twist.
Displaced nobles. I'm intrigued already. Tell me more.
Picture this. A character ripped from their life of luxury and thrown into unfamiliar territory. How do they cope?
Okay, I'm hooked. What kind of backgrounds fit into this displaced noble category?
One example that comes to mind is the royally rustic background.
Royally rustic. That's a unique combination. What's the story there?
Imagine a character raised on a farm, more comfortable with a plow than a royal decree, who suddenly discovers they have noble blood.
A noble who'd rather milk a cow than attend a royal ball? That's a refreshing change.
Exactly. And it raises so many questions about their character arc. Will they embrace their newfound nobility? Will they struggle to reconcile it with their humble upbringing? The possibilities are fascinating.
I can see the role-playing potential already. What other treasures lie within this displaced noble category?
Well, there's also the noble of the spoiled background. They're used to a life of luxury, weighted on hand and foot, and then, boom, they're on their own.
Oh, talk about a recipe for disaster.
Wow.
I can just picture them trying to barter for a loaf of bread with a handful of rubies. Don't you know who I am?
Exactly. It's a classic case of a pampered aristocrat out of their element. Do they rise to the occasion, or do they become a source of constant amusement for the party as they try to adapt to a life without servants?
Oh, the comedic potential is off the charts.
Yeah.
But beyond the humor, these displaced noble backgrounds really make us rethink what it means to be noble.
Absolutely. It challenges those stereotypes and shows us that true nobility isn't about wealth or titles. It's about character. How do they handle adversity? That's what defines them.
Well said. So what other fascinating categories did Bello explore in his article?
Another one that I found really intriguing was the burden noble. These are characters who carry a heavy weight of responsibility, often tied to their lineage or a secret past.
Ooh, burden nobles. Intrigue already. I always love a good backstory with a touch of mystery. What kind of burdens are we talking about here?
Well, take the Noble of the Purple Order, for instance. This background hints at a character whose family is sworn to protect a powerful magical artifact.
A magical artifact. Now we're talking, what kind of artifact are we envisioning here? A legendary sword, a mystical amulet.
It's entirely up to you and your dungeon master. That's the beauty of Bella's approach. He provides the framework, the spark, but you get to fill in the detail.
Oh, I love that. It keeps those creative juices flowing. But back to this Noble of the Purple Order, What sorts of challenges might they face in a typical D&D game?
Well, think about it. They're constantly on guard, protecting this artifact from those who would seek to steal or corrupt it. That's a lot of pressure.
It's a legacy fraught with peril, and I imagine that sense of duty could lead to some really tough moral dilemmas.
Exactly. Do they prioritize the safety of the artifact above all else, even if it means making difficult choices that could harm innocent people? Or do they find a way to balance their duty with their conscience?
Ah, those shades of gray. That's what makes these backgrounds so much more interesting than just a list of stats and skills.
I totally agree. So moving on from the noble of the Purple Order, what other compelling characters fit into this burden noble category?
Give me another example.
Well, one that stands out is the usurper.
Ooh, the usurper. That title alone suggests a backstory full of twists and turns. I need to hear more about this.
Picture this. A character who didn't inherit their noble title through entirely legitimate means. Perhaps they were a distant relative who seized power during a time of turmoil. Or maybe they orchestrated a cunning coup.
Okay, so we're talking ambition, maybe a little ruthlessness, but what about the burden? Are they always looking over their shoulder, fearing revenge?
That's definitely a possibility. They could be consumed by guilt, paranoia, or the constant threat of rebellion from those who believe the throne was unjustly taken. It's a lot to grapple with.
It sounds like a life of secrets and shadows. Exploring how that kind of past might shape a character's personality and morality would be fascinating. Do they become a tyrant, desperate to cling to power? Or do they strive to atone for their past by ruling with fairness and compassion?
Those are the questions that can fuel an entire campaign. And that's what makes Bello's work so engaging. He doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of power and ambition.
Absolutely. And those morally gray areas often lead to the most compelling stories, don't they? Nobility isn't always sunshine and roses.
You said it. So we've got our displaced nobles and our burdened nobles. What other gems has Bello unearthed in his exploration of noble backgrounds?
I'm all ears. What else have you got?
The last category I want to touch on is the noble out of place. These are characters who find themselves in unfamiliar cultures and environments, a far cry from their gilded cages.
Nobles out of place. I love it. It's like a recipe for both hilarious culture clashes and incredible character development. I can already imagine the faux pas and the misunderstandings. Tell me more.
Well, one example that comes to mind is the noble of the Twin Kingdoms.
Twin Kingdoms. Ooh, that sounds like a recipe for political intrigue. What's the story behind this particular background?
Imagine a character who comes from a land where two distinct cultures coexist, maybe even with a history of conflict between them.
Okay, I'm picturing two kingdoms with completely different customs, languages, even opposing views on magic or religion. Talk about a cultural melting pot.
Exactly. And our noble of the Twin Kingdoms has grown up navigating this complex dynamic, maybe even acting as a bridge between these two worlds.
So they're comfortable moving between these cultures, fluent in both languages, and familiar with all the customs. That's quite a skill set.
Precisely. They might even have a unique perspective, able to see the strengths and weaknesses of both cultures. But what happens when you take that character and drop them into a totally foreign environment, one that has no connection to their homeland?
Now that's where the real adventure begins. Suddenly, all their diplomatic skills and cultural knowledge are put to the test. Do they sink or swim?
And that's the question. Do they adapt? Do they try to cling to their old ways? It's a chance for some amazing role-playing and character growth.
I love that. It's like throwing a wrench into their carefully crafted world and seeing how they cope. Do they rise to the challenge or crumble under pressure?
It's their journey to make. And speaking of journeys, another fascinating noble out of place is the Noble of the North.
Noble of the North. I'm getting a very specific vibe from that name. Think rugged landscapes, harsh winters, maybe even a hint of Viking-inspired culture. Am I on the right track?
You're definitely picking up what I'm putting down. Imagine a character who hails from a land of frozen wastes, towering mountains, and ancient magic.
Okay, so we're talking about someone who's probably more comfortable battling a blizzard than navigating a ballroom. Hardiness and resilience are their strengths. But how do they fare when they're thrown into a world that's completely different from their own?
That's for you to decide. Do they thrive in warmer climates, or do they yearn for the familiar chill of home?
Will they embrace new experiences or cling to the traditions and beliefs of their homeland? The possibilities are so intriguing. What I appreciate about all of this is that Bello gives us the freedom to make these characters our own.
Exactly. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. And speaking of spice, Bello's article doesn't just stop at these background categories. He digs deeper, giving us specific details to help flesh out these noble characters in our games. He provides those little details that make them feel real. It really is. Like he's giving us all the tools and saying, go build something amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the external stuff, right? The titles, the fancy clothes.
Right. There's got to be more to it than that. Otherwise, you're just playing a cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
Bello gets that. He goes deeper.
He reminds us that these characters, nobles included, need those inner layers. Motivations, desires, flaws, that's where the real depth comes in.
Like, why would a noble choose this life? Why risk it all when you could be living in the lap of luxury?
Exactly. What's driving them? A thirst for adventure, a desire to prove themselves, or are they running from something? A past mistake, a family secret.
Now, those are the questions that get my storytelling gears turning. Imagine a noble of the Purple Order who's torn between their duty to this ancient order.
Right, and this secret yearning to break free, to experience the world on their own terms.
With like duty versus freedom, tradition versus self-discovery. That tension makes for such compelling storytelling.
Absolutely. Or think about the usurper who seizes power, maybe for the right reasons, maybe not. But now they're wrestling with the consequences, the guilt, the paranoia, the constant fear of being overthrown.
And it makes you wonder, will they become the very thing they fought against? A ruthless tyrant?
Or will they try to rise above their past and become a truly just ruler? It's that potential for growth, that internal struggle, that makes these characters so much fun to play.
Because in the end, it's all about the choices our characters make.
Right.
And those choices mean so much more when we understand what's driving them, what they're fighting for, what they're afraid of.
Couldn't said it better myself. Bello gives us the framework to build these complex, believable characters. It's up to us to breathe life into them.
And to find those little quirks, those unique details that make them truly unforgettable. It all goes back to that collaborative storytelling. It's a beautiful thing. But for now, I think we should probably wrap up this deep dive.
I agree. We could talk about this all day. But we want to hear from you.
That's right. Tell us, what kind of noble character would you create? What drives them? What are their secrets? Head over to the comments and let us know. And be sure to check out Paul Bello's full article, 5e DND Noble Background Ideas. Thanks for joining us on another deep dive. Until next time, happy adventuring.